Okay, we're going to finish up the last of the video series, and you're actually going to be able to put your model together by the end of this. So if you haven't already done it, what you should have done by now is each individual piece, floor and walls, each one of those should be decorated. This should have happened probably before we went away for the break, but if it has not happened, then stop what you're doing and finish painting and decorating your walls. If you will remember, I asked for each person to have a baseboard and a crown molding, and then molding around the windows and around the doors. I went ahead and added in this little extra piece of chair molding, but all you got to do is just draw it, color it in. You can also apply a piece of paper. You can apply some wood, which would require some additional trimming when you go to put it together. But if you have not done that, please go ahead and make sure that each individual piece is fully decorated. You notice that I pulled a postage stamp to represent a picture hanging on the wall. It's right at about the right scale. Of course, you don't have to use postage stamps, but all of those things that you did in your detailed decor should start appearing on your wall. I drew a little clock over here, light switch, a little wall outlet, and so that's where you should be at the beginning of starting this particular lesson. Now I want to show you before you start gluing things together, two things, the doors and the windows. If you'll remember in class, I said when you cut out the door, save the piece that was the shape of the door and go ahead and paint it and decorate it, and that way you have ready to go door when you start to put this thing back together. But this is what I want you to do. Flip it over after you've cut it out and get a hold of any kind of tape. It could be masking tape, could be Scotch tape. It doesn't make any difference, but I want you to put it on so that it creates like a hinge. And so your door can be open on your model, and that's actually a much more active looking model. So please do that for the door, piece of tape for the hinge. The other thing that I want to show you on the window, most of you at this point have probably just drawn in the lines representing the mullions and the muttons. That is probably the bare minimum. What I really want you to do is, and we kind of talked about this in class, is I want you to cut out that shape, and then what you can do is find a scrap of a magazine that looks like something that you might be looking at through your model. Go ahead and cut out a little piece of it, and there's two different ways that you can do this. What you can do is cut out a piece and just go ahead and glue it onto your window piece, so mullions and muttons. Or the other thing that you can do, and this looks a little better, and this is kind of my preference, is that you can take your piece and you can actually glue it to the back side of your window cutout, and that way you have the thickness of the window. And what you can do is you can come back later and you can add in with little toothpicks or little pieces of wood the parts that represent the mullions and the muttons. This takes a little bit more time and effort, but it looks a lot better. You can actually glue those right onto your window. You want to make sure that everything is straight, neat, and tidy, but it's going to wind up looking something like that. A little neater and a little tidier than what I did. So that's my preferred way of doing it, but you absolutely, definitely want something that your window is looking through to, okay? So that is all your prep work for getting things ready to start putting together. So putting together is going to be real similar to putting together the furniture. What I recommend you do is go ahead and tear you off several pieces of the tape that you were using, and you're going to see why in just 1 second. But go ahead and have, you know, half a dozen or so ready to go, and your glue, of course. And then so what you're going to want to, let me show you before we start actually gluing it together. If you remember from the furniture lesson, when you drew your walls, you drew exactly what was on the front elevation, but on the paper it was just a single line. And then of course here we've got the thickness of the foam core. So just like in the lesson from furniture, you're going to have to deduct the thickness of the foam core from some of your walls. And so in putting it together without glue, without tape or pins, we call this dry fitting something together. And so if I were to put this onto the front side of the back wall flat, then what you're going to realize is that this front edge is hanging over about the width of a piece of foam core. And so before you start gluing these together, you're going to want to take your knife and trim off the thickness of the foam core. Now I've already done that in a previous step, so now I just want to show you about how to get these things put together. So glue, big old fat chunky bead of glue. And this could get a little bit messy, so have something under your table. But you glue it down. You can get somebody to help you. And the thing that's nice about Elmer's glue is that it takes forever to dry, so it's very forgiving to work with. But this is where your tape comes in handy. So like you can literally put tape on each of these pieces that will sort of help it to keep from moving around while you add the other piece. So next thing I want to add is sidewall. Same process. I'm going to glue the corner, and I'm going to glue the edge. Some of this you may have to do in more than one sitting, just depending on how the glue dries. But what you can do is you can take your tape and you can put it on the back side. So I'm going to swing this around so that you can see it taped. Taping is perfectly fine. If you're worried about it pulling apart, remember, you can always add a pin going in. It's sort of a double redundant way to secure it while the glue is drying, but if you're worried about the tape pulling apart, you can always add pins, and then you're going to wind up doing the exact same thing on this bottom edge right here. So again, piece of tape, and that's going to hold it right there. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then you will have a completed model. So same steps, glue on the back edge. Now if you're gluing a door, remember you don't want to glue the bottom of the door itself. You just want to put glue on either side because that door will need to open and close. So we put this together like so. Our tape goes on the back. One more piece of tape on this edge right here. Okay. And now we have our little set that's been put together. Once everything is put together and dried, then you apply the furniture that you've already built, and voila, you have got a finished, painted, three-dimensional, half-inch scale model of your set. Good job.